So let's talk about respect. It's a word we all think we get. But what if I told you that the real foundation of respect in our relationships isn't built on big, flashy gestures, but in the thousands of tiny, seemingly insignificant moments we have every single day? In this explainer, we're going to dive into how these small interactions can either build an incredible fortress of love or slowly, piece by piece, tear it down.
Okay, let's start with something that might sound a little too familiar. Have you ever found yourself completely baffled by how a tiny little mistake, I'm talking forgetting to buy milk or leaving your keys in the wrong spot, somehow just explodes into a massive fight?
We're often led to believe that respect is shown through these grand gestures, right? But the actual feeling of being safe and loved and secure in a relationship, turns out that's shaped almost entirely by the small stuff, our everyday habits, the tone of voice we use, and how we react in the moment. All right, so let's get into it by looking at how these tiny, tiny tensions can suddenly become the biggest sources of friction in a relationship. Just think about it for a second. Accidentally stepping on a brand new chair, or maybe forgetting that one super important item at the store. On a good day, that's nothing, right? But if that background feeling of respect is already a bit shaky, those same minor incidents can feel like huge personal attacks. So what's really going on here? What's the root cause of this blow-up? Well, it almost always comes down to one simple thing: a total misinterpretation of what was intended. So many of our conflicts really just kick off because we fail to see a partner's action for what it actually is: an honest mistake, just a moment of being human. It's not some calculated act of disrespect. It's just life happening. And this is exactly how that chain reaction happens. See, it starts with a simple, honest mistake, but that mistake gets seen as a personal attack, and that immediately triggers a defensive reaction. And before you even know what's happening, you're in a massive argument, miles away from whatever that tiny little incident was. Okay, so let's move on and see what happens when this pattern repeats itself over and over. It can have a really deep emotional impact, completely changing the vibe of our own home. Well, the first major casualty is this constant feeling of being judged unfairly. You start to feel like every little thing you do is being put under a microscope and graded, and you're pretty much always failing the test. And of course, that leads directly to feeling like you're constantly being criticized, not for big, important things, but for the small, unintentional slip-ups that are just part of being a person. It's absolutely exhausting. So, what's the end result of all this? Over time, these feelings just completely wear away your sense of emotional safety. And the one place in the entire world that should be your sanctuary, your home, starts to feel tense and uncomfortable. But here's the most important part, the really hopeful part. This damaging cycle can absolutely be broken. It all starts by turning respect from just a passive idea into an active daily practice. Yeah, you can think of it like swapping out the habits that wear down respect for practices that actively build it back up. So instead of jumping to the conclusion that they meant to hurt you, you just pause before you react. Instead of pointing fingers, you try to use softer communication. And this all comes down to some really simple but incredibly powerful little shifts in how we act. It means listening to actually understand, not just to argue back. It means saying thank you for the small things, offering comfort instead of criticism, and just giving each other a little grace to be imperfect. So, why does all this focus on the tiny little moments matter so much for the long-term health and happiness of a relationship? What's the big deal? It matters because that feeling of being truly loved and seen and safe, well, that's not built in a single day or with one grand gesture. It is literally the sum total of thousands of small everyday moments, all added up over time. Every single one of them counts. And maybe this is the ultimate test. Real respect isn't about how you treat each other when things are perfect. It truly shows itself in those small, ordinary moments when you're tired, you're stressed, you've had a bad day, and you still make the choice to be kind. So we'll end with this question for you to take with you. What's one simple, concrete action you can take starting today to make your home feel like the safest, most comfortable place on earth again?